Hello everyone, I'm Eva and it's my pleasure to be here between these very talented artists, all of you guys. Today our panel discussion will be accompanied by Corina Linder, Samara Hersh and Lali Alvarez, and me, Eva Niedre. As you already know, these artists, I will maybe tell shortly about myself and about my experience and what allows me to be here today and talk with you about these wonderful forms of art. I am producer with 10-year experience in different kinds of culture projects, and since 2018 I have been one of our companies, my company's foundation Initium focus has been working with participatory art, with community art projects, with applied theatre. And I am also, in Latvia, I am the organizer of Baltic Applied Theatre School, which is a collaboration project between 3 Baltic countries and Germany. And we are doing this teaching part, the school part, and we are also doing several kinds of projects, and currently working in Latvia, in Estonia, and in Australia. So it's quite wide range, but the things what is uniting all of that is participation from the communities, and generally I would say that my experience is based on working with the communities from the very beginning. Some projects are also based that communities are participating in the general performance and in the process also afterwards, but usually the experience would be that it's created together with them. So from the very beginning, from the story collecting and from the angle and perspective what we find together and issues what we tackle together until the performance itself, where the community members are the main actors or are the main people of the show and performance. So that is briefly about my experience, and now I would really like that you all 3 tell about your experiences, because what I have read about you each come from very different fields, and some of you also work very multidisciplinary, so it would be very interesting for our audience members to hear a little bit more about yourselves.
I start? Hi, I'm Lali Alvarez. I'm from Barcelona in Spain, Catalonia. And I'm a writer, mostly. I am a theater director as well. And I do projects with the community of a certain territory. I cannot split the work within a community and its territory. I work with a collective. We are called Wibasa, Theater of the Real, because all my work it's about real stories or about reality. So we don't work with fantasy. We work with true material. And this is what makes that all my work, from like when I am writing at my home or when I am doing community projects, all my work is participatory, and we can discuss about that. But I think that I never work alone. That's all, no? It's enough?
Thank you. Yes. We can of course learn then afterwards much more about your work and experience through the discussion.
Talk more later.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Who wants to continue?
You want me to?
Yeah.
Thank you. So, hi everyone, I'm Corinne, originally from Finland, but I today live and work in France, in south of France. And I'm actually coming from the circus background, so I started when I was 6 years old on the street, and I ended up in France for my education. And a few years ago I switched the place of the stage, and I'm today directing and a content creator of hybrid experiences that mixes the sensorial art, the digital art, and the circus world. And so I created 6 years ago my own company called Field Concepts, which I'm trying to research this fine borderline between the physical world and the virtual world, and kind of trying to create naturally new ways of looking at circus and maybe a new relationship, so to say, between the actors on stage and the audience through the use of technology and multisensorial design.
But use of technology is also right on the spot, or you also create projects which are being able to which the audience can watch from the distance in the
I'm really
digital.
using the digital tools, the virtual tools, as sometimes just a little bit, sometimes more, but I'm not interested in doing online content. I'm more into using the technical tool as a tool to make visible the invisible somehow, and to make the inaccessible somehow accessible, and to reach things that we couldn't do in real life, but I need to be in the real life to do that. It's quite a fun. We can talk about it later. But
Thank you. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Samara Hirsch. I am an artist originally from Naarm, Melbourne in Australia, and I studied in Amsterdam in the Netherlands, where I also live and work. And I originally trained in theatre as a theatre director, and slowly became more interested in the audience and how the audience interacts with the work that I'm making. And I also work a lot with non-professionally trained performers, so I've worked a lot with teenagers, with children, with older people, and by virtue of working with people who aren't professionally trained, it's sort of affected the way that I think about the frames in which I'm creating for performances to happen in. And I'm very, I suppose for me, participation is something around hacking, the term I use to sort of hack the traditional theatre and create different possibilities that can happen when we sort of break down those hierarchies or those rituals that we're conditioned within.
Thank you so much. So you all have experience also working with professional artists whose profession is art, performing art, and also with people who are everyday professionals who are doing their own jobs, but they are a part of some artwork creation process. Am I right? So it's a question for all of you, would you say that working with the people whose profession is not performing arts, is it a bigger challenge rather to work with professional artists who are trained in the field, or it is a different challenge? How would you state it?
I don't have experience, and I'm not working with. I'm showing my pieces in different conditions, and in my pieces the audience becomes kind of the member of the show, so they are part of the narration. So of course we have a big consideration how to include them and how to make them feel safe and considered. But I'm not working in the pre-production with the community engagement, and I hope I will someday. But today it's not my case yet. So.
Well, for me, it's a different challenge. It's not more challenging. It's different. At the end, you are working with people. So when we are like exposing us, we are all the same. But of course, when you work with non-professionals, you should like share the tools of your discipline that they need to use if they are on stage, and if they have to be in some way in stage that they need this kind of tools, you have to train them in some way when they are in stage, of course. But for me it's almost the same. It's working with people to create a ritual, and the process is different, yeah.
For me, it's very concretely like working, for example, with older people. It became very obvious that who were not trained actors, memory became a question, how to remember things. So we'd have to sort of create frameworks where memory wasn't important. So like with a trained actor, they're learning lines, they're coming with that skill, which is a skill. So that sort of determined, I guess, some of the frameworks which I shared yesterday with some of these participants. But for example, works that can have cards involved, or cueing systems or ways that I can help people remember things without then having to come with that knowledge or certain tools that actors bring. Also that actors can take on something, like they can learn something but make you believe that they're saying it for the first time. That's very hard with people who haven't trained with that craft. So finding tools to keep that spontaneity or keep that authenticity that's so precious when you're working with non-professional actors. It's a strange term, but people who don't have that experience in actor training.
Yeah, for me it's important as well. It's not about to train them to be actors for a while, because this don't work. And at least in my experience, if you try to make that people who is not used to be actors, you want them to be actors, the thing don't work.
Yeah.
And it's like an end of a course thing, and it's like, oh, poor, they do it very well. No, it's not about that. But of course, if someone have to be in front of an audience, you can train something about self-confidence, or which is the objective you have when you are in front of the audience, or preparing what we are going to talk about or to do. Is this kind of training, not like classes for theater.
Yeah, thank you so much, because I was asking this question also partly to hear something like that from your side, because I think, at least for me, it is very important question, because for me, working with people who are not trained artists, trained actors, that there are of course many challenges, but the experience is more truthful and more meaningful, I would say. For at least that is why I do that and why it's for me interesting. But also in Latvia, participatory art and community-based art, applied theater, it's not an old concept. It's actually quite new, and our colleagues can also hopefully agree with me, and Krista is one of the first ones who started to do it in Latvia, and then we kind of also came in with our educational program and with our projects, but there are still not so many artists who do it. They, of course, every year they become more and more, and this experience becomes more interesting for people also in conventional theater to work more with real stories and real people, real people in the sense that, who are not trained actors, that's what I meant. But in Latvia it was very challenging, at least for me at the beginning when we started in 2018 to do it more. There were just few practices before, and when I talked about these things and methods, people often confused it with amateur theater, because in Latvia we have very strong amateur theater movement. We have, in our small country, we have more than 350 state-funded amateur theaters. And there, obviously, one of the requests from the people is that they are trying to be like actor as well as they can do that. And that was a challenge for me to explain that this is something different, that you don't have to be an actor, you are not an actor, but we are really interested in your story and who you are as a person. So that is why I also asked this question.
For me, this is interesting because lots of people confuse it with amateur theater, but as well with social theater. And this is what it brings me to think about why we want to work with a community or with people who is not professional. And I think we have to, when we face this kind of projects, we have to think about these people, about the participants, not as objects of our work, not as receivers of our work. We have to see them as subjects of the artist fact. Social theater is more to go to give something and people receive what you are working with them. Or lots of participatory arts that I have seen is people who an artist took them like an object because I want to explain something and I use you.
Yeah, of course. That is psychodrama and drama therapy, and then it's even more deeper.
Or artists that, I don't know, I can say examples, but I don't want to.
Yeah, but I think I can say that at least I got the idea of what you are saying, and hence I'm using the term applied theatre, because underneath that it's like an umbrella term under what can be all of these different kinds of ways of working with the community members. But I think participatory theatre being one of them is really also diverse practice. And my question would be, continuing this conversation, I don't know, I haven't unfortunately yet seen any of your works. I would love to, but what I have read about your experiences so far is that I was very interested in the topics what you are exploring, and there was what I read. It was a lot. You have worked with teenagers, you have worked with elderly people, also as you mentioned, and also the topics are very intimate. Am I correct with that assumption? Would you say it's more difficult to work with larger crowds in participatory arts, or with maybe smaller crowds but very intimate topics, or is it again a different challenges?
Yeah, I mean, for me, in the two major works that I've made that are very participatory, in the sense that the audience is very much engaged in the piece as performers as well. They're both very small works. So Sex and Death, the work that I shared yesterday, led by older people, is a one-on-one experience. And the other project, Body of Knowledge, where the teenagers phone in, that's for an audience of 13 people. So it's really small, and it's intentionally small because there is there's like another show that happens on the side that's like all the care work that takes place, which is before the performance to prepare, a lot like what Lali was saying, that there's a lot about a real and maybe to lean into just that other conversation, there's a huge power imbalance when you're inviting people who don't understand necessarily, haven't learnt what the theatre is. So there's a lot of responsibility, I think, to empower and to make very transparent what is about to happen and what's going on. So there's the pre-show, there's the show, and then there's the debrief after the performance. So to take care of all of that, for me, it's helped to have smaller groups so that I can really pay attention. Having said that, I would love to make a larger, participatory work, and I believe that it's really possible to do that with all the right ethics and care practices. I'm learning, slowly how to really make sure that I can let go of control, because in the works I'm making, I'm handing over a lot of control to the performers, but I also need a degree of control to manage what's going on in those freedoms that I'm releasing.
Yeah, of course,
if that makes sense.
It does, and I think also this is the way, what I was a bit talking in the very beginning, that there is this very big difference if you are involving the communities and people from the very beginning of the preparation process, or you are just involving them in the moment of the performance, because then obviously also the level of how much I can share my own stories is much different, isn't it?
Yes, I think that there is, I think that when you have this, I wasn't here on your speak yesterday, but when you propose your, for example, Sex and Death, I mean, the people come and see as a piece of exhibition or as a performance. What is the name of the? It's
a one-on-one dialogue.
Yeah, but is it like installed as the whole day, and you are there the whole day? What is the format of the presentation of this kind of?
For each for the audience, the audience has about a 45-minute experience with one other person.
So this is what I mean when I started the project, going to this world of digital art. It is quite hard to get a big audience in most of the cases, because you are limited by the objects also in use and the technology that is quite complicated. And of course, if you have one person, you have much more possibilities to give like a personal show. But then there comes also the reality of financing a project and to sell your project, and at least in stage art you have to reach a certain number of people to be able to turn, how do you say, tourner? To do a tour with it, right? Mm-hmm. So I had both to question, and I think it's evolving. As we said, I think it's really good to start small and then see how that could be considered in a bigger context when you have more confidence, because you go so close to people and you go to their intimate space. So if you don't make the work first step by step, then I think you can make bigger faults on the way. So I think I start always small, but of course I think it's possible to go bigger, but it's more costful and it needs experience.
Because I saw also in your the description I read about your work was written that you have worked like even with 150 participants. Is it correct?
Yes, it was a crazy project.
Tell us about it, please.
Well, this was a very funny project and quite challenging. There is this cultural institution in Barcelona. Each neighborhood have this cultural place. I don't know the name in English. Centro cívico.
Cultural center.
Yeah,
or
like a cultural
community center.
Yeah, cultural and community center. It's both, no? And it was the birthday of the 25th birthday of this cultural center, and they wanted to do something big and something. This is one of the first cultural centers in Barcelona who have a program special to connect with the community of their neighborhood. So they are trained to work with the neighborhood, and I was working there before, so I know the neighborhood. I was living here for a while, and they asked me to do something. And this center is based in an old factory that now is the cultural center. And I started with the story of this cultural factory, which is the story of Barcelona, because there, well, anyway, I started to think about to explain the story of the factory and how the factory affects the neighborhood or affected the neighborhood, and how the neighborhood affected Barcelona, and so on. And so then I work with 20 associations from the neighborhood, with all the people involved in the associations. I worked with neighbors that I met in the street, just walking the street and explaining that I'm going to do that. Do you want to share with me? So, and it was a long-term project. I was working there for 8 months. Mm-hmm. So I had the time to sitting on a bar with a woman, watching pictures from their grandfather who was working on the factory. And at the end, we create a big assembly when the people sit like this and talk about things. Because in this factory, it was one of the focus of the anarchism during the Second Republic in Spain before the Civil War. And it was a place where lots of things happened there. So we took this form and we made a big assembly with all the people from the neighborhood and with all these 150 persons, some of them explaining their own story with pictures of the family who they go bring into the audience, some of them being characters of the 1930 time, some of them just singing because they were a choral in the neighborhood, but everything have the form of an assembly, mm-hmm. a big assembly, where the audience were invited to talk as well. Mm-hmm. So it was a big event, super cool.
That sounds really exciting.
Yeah, and we're supposed to do it in the street because to take more people, but this day was raining so much. Wow. So at the end we do it indoors, and it was very difficult because it was full and all the people coming in, and it was like that.
You should come to work in Latvia, because our people are so crazy that they don't care if it's raining or it can pouring. They are on the field.
Rain is not our friend.
No, we are like.
No, but
in that
it
case,
was a
tough.
huge project. But at the end, the way of working, it was the same when I worked with 8 people in the stage.
Mm.
Because for me it's always the same, more or less. Then I do what the project needs, but my way of being in the project is always the same. First is to know where I'm gonna work, which is the story of the thing that flies over this place. I have a time to be there and collect, listen, and research and understand. It's like an immersion. And after that, making a call, and everyone who wants to join is welcome. Sometimes the call is just for teenagers, sometimes for all the neighborhoods, sometimes it's just for doctors or whatever. Or circus artists. and then we start like with all the material, seeing what is going to happen when the audience come.
Why I asked this question is because, at least for myself, what I have found interesting, especially at the very beginning when we started to work with these projects, and also with people who didn't had any experience in participating in participatory art, it was much easier to work actually with bigger crowds. Yes, management-wise, maybe it's a bigger challenge because you need to somehow get these all people together and explain them, deal with each of them differently, of course. But in the end, they felt, I think, more free because they were not so much exposed. And from other hand, I remember I was participating one time in Martin's project where people were reading each other diaries. And he will probably tell you later about the project. It was very interesting. But for me as a participant, it was a very big challenge because from one to one I had to open up and tell very intimate stories about myself. Of course it depends on the content, but that's why I was thinking how it is in your experience.
In my experience, when I touch more intimate things about the people, what I do is after I put it in the mouth of the actors, of professional actors.
Yeah.
Because for me it's more easy. Because there are stories that the people who are the protagonists cannot share it in a stage, or they don't want. And
I would say maybe at least in our experience, what I have done with my team, not that they can't, they can, and it has been very interesting and very deep and meaningful times when it happens. But yeah, it's more vulnerable, and of course.
And it's another way to participate in a project. For me, when I write scripts for theater, I always work with people who fit the script. They are participating.
Yeah.
Not in the production.
But I think there's something also with the kind of the onboarding ritual, what I talked a little bit about this earlier, but how to receive people and how to give them the right tools to feel comfortable and to know the playground, the framework, and know the rules, if you have some, to feel more, to know what they're allowed to do and what is the project, because maybe there is, as you said, there's not many who have experienced this kind of type of project, so they're a little bit afraid also. They don't really know the ritual, what's going to happen as you do when you go to a cinematographic experience. And so maybe to create these new rituals and to create clear guidelines for them to onboard in a good manner and then to leave them that space of a playground. I see I have one project when they are for 1 hour blindfolded by a virtual reality headset, so they are seeing a film, but they are at the same time not seeing each other. And what I have noticed after 4 years of experience in performing it is that people really connect to each other on a certain level. There can be one who is very excited and it goes to the other people. Somehow the energy between us when you have a group of people is much stronger than if it's 2 people. This group energy that I don't know how to put it in more words because they don't see each other. But they are more engaged if there are many people and laughing in themselves because you can't hear because you are cut off the reality, and they can feel each other. So I think that we are group animals and we can feel each other. So of course, it's very different. I don't say it's better or worse, but I think it's different to have a group of people or creating one-to-one experiences. But for the both parts, I think what is really important is how to get the right tools to the audience to feel free and available and playful when they come to see whatever the experience is.
Yeah, and in my experience, it also matters sometimes. It depends really where you are working, because I have different experiences in different countries, and of course mentality of people also is a thing what you have to consider. And a lot of Latvians themselves and a lot of people would say that Latvians are considered to be introverts, and that it's really hard to actually engage them, especially maybe if they're engaged from the beginning.
Like
it's
Finnish.
easier.
Finland.
yeah, something like that. But maybe again different, of course, and in the sense that if you are from the process from the beginning, it's easier. But if you are, especially in these cases when participatory art is happening on the spot and on the when you come to the performance, and then somebody makes you do something, if it's more interactive, then they are like watching to each other and it's like, okay, who will start first? But why I'm talking about it, because I know that Samara, you, and also Corinne, you have been working in several countries. You, for instance, you come from Finland and you have worked in France, and you come from Australia and you work in Netherlands. So how would you describe? Is it different to work with different nations, and what are your biggest challenges, maybe in many, like in different contexts?
Yeah, I mean, I was explaining yesterday, I've been working a lot with teenagers on this project, Body of Knowledge. And it's a fascinating, the premise of the work, sorry to repeat, is asking teenagers what questions they would like to ask older people that they will never meet in person about the body or about body politic. And we do a lot of workshops with these different teenagers about what kind of questions that they have for older people. And I've been doing that in parts of Asia, in Singapore, in Hong Kong, in Japan, and then also in different parts of Europe, which are also vastly different. Kids in Hungary to kids in Amsterdam, and then also in Australia. And there are, of course, a lot of similarities with those kids around the kind of questions that they come up with or the kind of preoccupations they have. But then their relationship to speaking, to talking to adults, because they phone them, they call the adults on the phone. The whole hierarchies of society, these things vastly differ. And I think coming from Australia, I also grew up in a very particular community in Australia. I grew up in a Jewish community in Sydney, which Jewish people in Australia make up less than 0.1% of the population. So for me, being Australian is already like a stretch, because there are a lot of, I think, ways of being on the periphery, and I think that's maybe informed my practice a bit, like a sensitivity to code switching and understanding how different cultures work. So when I moved to the Netherlands, again, there's another code switching, and then working in different communities, in different places internationally. It requires a lot of listening and to really check your assumptions. And I was saying to the group, particularly in Asia, that's been a really extraordinary learning process for me around intergenerational practice, just because there are different, in certain places that I've worked, different codes of the adult-child dynamic that in more Western cultures, or particularly in Australia, where I've grown up, where I've worked, it's very relaxed. There's more of a bleed between young and old, and you can be a bit more informal, or even through language, the formal-informal language differences doesn't exist. And so that's maybe just one example. And similarly, working with older people and talking about sex is also really interesting, because of course that also comes with different sensitivities, I guess, in different cultures, and also death and other sort of more taboo subjects, I guess. That
it's very rooted in the culture and in the traditions as well, I would say, probably. But what would you describe as very briefly, what would you say was your, like, the hardest country where to work, the most difficult, the most challenging place, and the most easy one? Just
Oh, I don't know if I can
Don't
answer
listen.
like that.
The ones from this country, don't listen.
I wouldn't say there's a hard or an easy. They're all extraordinarily enriching. I was just doing Body of Knowledge in Italy earlier this year in Bologna, and that for me was a particularly emotional experience because I found that the teenagers were just, I don't know, we were speaking different languages. I don't speak any Italian, but by the end we were all weeping. And it was like, will we ever see each other again? So, and similarly, in Japan, I was there last year, and again, not speaking the language, so working with translators. And when I first met those teenagers, I was like, "Hey guys," and they were like, very quiet, very, very respectful, and in a very different way. And by the end, we were playing like warm up, these sort of theatre mime games that we all played, and finding these ways to connect. So I'm not answering your question intentionally because I don't want to, but I think each one
like
teaches, has just, I think also made me understand where theatre and performing arts connects us, and also that we do come with our own assumptions and how to
Yeah, that you answered my question perfectly, actually. And what about you?
Well, she said, but maybe to what touched me, what you're saying is I think it's really a question of sensitivity. I mean, I did circus for a certain reason. I mean, it's very stereotypic to say to run away with the circus, but it's also a little bit true somehow that you kind of want to discover. And circus is a very 360-degree worldwide, and so I've had a chance to travel a lot and meet a lot of people, and I think the difference is creates a kind of a sensitivity where you somehow slowly learn to read and to listen to people and to respect the differences and try to get that to be a force rather than a competition. But I work mostly not with, like, I don't do much workshops with people before my pieces, not today at least. But I think the differences in the 15 countries that I have been with one of my pieces is maybe how we receive, and my way of acting there is the onboarding, where I talk to people before, where I try to engage with them, and the importance of adapting every time. And it doesn't mean not just culturally, but also group-wise. There is sometimes a group that is more sensitive, a group that is more full-on, and so you are adapting yourself as an actor somehow with that energy that these people are giving you. And so it's a dialogue, I would say. I don't think it's always a dialogue, and that is why it's so fascinating about participatory art for me, that is never the same. You can create the same piece and write the same piece and have the same framework, but the people who come, they will change the experience you also have as an actor, and there is where I really, really, really like what I'm doing. I never get bored.
And because today we are in circus and we have a lot of circus artists also here, I would like to ask you, do you think, because we have talked about different fields, but it all connects in the performing arts, of course, but would you say that in circus there are some more challenges or difficulties what artists should have considered when they work with participatory arts in circus field?
I think that we have a different strength. I think we're not very great yet at creating storytelling. But we are very good at looking at objects for all the different angles, like every angle, on top of it, behind it, to the side, to create metaphoric images about emotions. I think that's a very good strength in circus. For me, at least, it's very personal. Then there is a fascination of body. I mean, what we can do and how the differences makes a force in circus, coming from different backgrounds, having different body types, and how these differences can be a force together. And I think that we find the same thing somehow in participatory arts when you work with different fields and different people. What was the original question? I'm lost in it.
Would you say that in circus there are some more challenges that you have to face?
Yeah, so I think that you can never explain why I climb a tissue and going up in 10 meters and doing a trick. Even if I put an apple there, I'm really hungry, I get an apple. Okay, yeah. So there is some limits of the logic of narration, and that's why the circus went to a more abstract, I think, turn. But this abstract turn can also be very a tool. So I wouldn't say that it's more complicated. It's just very different, and I think the key of that is in the storytelling, which we maybe need to learn from other industries to connect more.
So that's a fantastic opportunity that these kinds of projects can connect together different artists and help each other to find these beautiful things. And maybe you can then briefly also tell about the how it is in writing world, because you said that you're mainly a writer, and then you mentioned that you're a theatre director, and you also when I had this small catch up with you before the discussion, you also said that you do participatory arts in the writing with the writing as a tool. Would you
totally.
care to explain us how does that work?
I think the reason is because I work with true stories. When I write a theater piece, and when you write about true stories, you cannot just eat the official version, or you cannot just want to say your opinion about this true story. So you have to research, you have to connect with people, you have to look for the main characters, the protagonists. So in all my playwrights, I collaborate with lots of people. I interview the people who are connected directly with the story. I mostly write political theater, well, what they call political theater. It's just to understand us, because I think all theater is political. But I speak about the power, about human rights, so it's what they call political, you understand, if I say political theater. So sometimes I have to speak to lawyers, I have to speak to people who is in the power and have a different perspective that I can have as a citizen. I have to speak to lots of people who knows and who can show me the different perspective of one story. And at the end, of course, I try my own perspective and I presented it in one way, because I want to. I arrive into a point that I think, okay, for me the story is this one, and I want to denounce something. So I want to tell the story like this. But yes, and for example, I have a play which is called Barcelona Against the Wall. In 2006, there was an event in Barcelona where three guys from Chile were sorry, my English. Okay, they have a trouble with police, and they were in jail, but all the story that police said, it was untrue. So from this case to the 2016, it was when we have the opening of the show, I was for 2 years researching all the truths, all the lies that police said to catch people and put them in jail, and other kinds of vulnerations of human rights in Barcelona.
Mm-hmm.
So we interviewed a lot of people, and at the end we made a party in the theater. We asked the audience to come to a party with a DJ, with music, with a bar, with beers, so on. Of course, no sitting. And we have 3 actors that perform all the characters that I interviewed with verbatim. Do you know verbatim?
Verbatim,
which is you have an interview and then you put the same words in the same way within the actors, no? So we were in the party, la 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 la, and in a certain moment you start talking, and you go to the microphone that there is in the party and you start talking your story. And of course it's not your story, But I made, from all the stories, I made 3 characters, and these 3 actors that were that the audience didn't know that they are actors.
Yeah, I see. So it's a bit also, of course, of a detective work involved.
Yeah, but the people that we are explaining their stories, they were in the theater as well.
No. That sounds really interesting.
Which it was very heavy. And at the end of the show, we had this discussion with the true people.
But is the bar connected to that to get people drunk before the
The people drunk and so on. And well, the bar is like a metaphor.
But it is a good place to share things.
The bar it was a metaphor because it starts with like a party and it ends like a manifestation. I don't know, because at the end we had this last scene. It was 15 minutes of just names and cases, names and cases. So it starts like a party and it's not a party anymore, which for us is a metaphor of our city. Barcelona, the very beautiful city in the Mediterranean with party, and it's not like this.
But did it also raise these issues, and were these issues heard by the people who were actually responsible for all these?
The thing is, I don't want I don't want the people with power in the stage. This is one of my rules.
No, what I meant was more than like, was the effect of the performance also what you were expecting? Was there some aftermath afterwards?
Yeah, of course. We had 3 undercover police every night at the theater. Yeah, we know them, and we had them there all the night, every night, during 1 month the first season, and 3 weeks the second season. And this show just can be performed in this theater because no theater in Catalonia want to buy it, because we have the stories of the people, but we say the names of the politicians, of the cops, and everything. So, and we say name and surname. So it was not easy, but it's a decision you make, no? And lots of people is connected with that, because we have the people from International Amnesty in Catalonia. They were in the show as well, talking about the things. They have the papers. It's not something that I invented or that the people I interviewed invented. We have lawyers and so on. So
that's really interesting, and I think in this hour we also managed to cover these different variations of how deep and how wide-ranged can be participatory arts, because your last example was where it goes really deep in the political issues and very important human rights issues, but also it can be as a game, right, when the participants come and joyfully, playfully engage just in the ending result process.
And it's political as well when it's a game for me.
No, of course, also that always can be a part of it, but what I mean also these ways how you as an artist are engaging the audience, right? It can be so various, and I think for all of the audience members, the ones who have experience in participatory arts and the ones who don't have it yet, you could just take these various examples and look into them and be free to create whatever kind of participatory art you wish for. And hence I would have a last question and last thing what I would really want to hear from you, ladies, would be how would you be could you please tell some encouraging words for our artists who will work together also? Are you also going to work? Sorry? You are all going to work together in some points in this project, right? Yeah. And create some wonderful pieces. So could you say some words of encouragement and advice and
I don't know if it's encouragement, but it's what I say to me when I start a project every time, because it's very difficult to start projects and to start again from the beginning every time. But what I say to me always is, you are gonna learn, so open your ears, open your heart, and open your mind, and be ready to learn from the people who is going to be with you in the process. You are not more or less than them. You are just you are going to be a community, and try to build a community from the beginning with the people you are going to work with, and everything is going to be okay. And no, because sometimes the results are great, sometimes they are not. But if the process is nutritive and it remains something after you leave from a place where you work with people, maybe the performance, the final performance is not so great. It can be, you have to fight for excellence, but sometimes don't happen. But the process is very important.
And making mistakes are part of it.
Yeah.
And I think that's also very cultural. I mean, I feel like there is this question of failing, and in different countries we have a different relationship to fail, and how we look at things and saying, oh, it didn't work, okay, next thing. So I think it's all a question about coming up. I mean, because we all make mistakes and we are human, and for me the creative process is, the mistakes can also lead to something very good, and we all, I think, know that. So, and I think that you all know what to do either way.
For me, there's two sort of participatory art practices we're talking about. One is with the audience, and one is with the performers, if you're working with people who are non-professionally trained performers. I would say, in terms of the audience or the forum, or participatory forums, if people are interested in exploring that, for me what's encouraging is like to think or fantasize about what you would love to experience as an audience. You know, what sort of would you love to have happen to you, and from that place, you know, as wild as that fantasy might be, you know, to see what could happen, or that question of what have you not experienced yet in a theatre or in life, and what could you propose that that hasn't, what could you dare to propose. The other, I think, is more complicated, working with non-professionally trained performers or communities, and I think with that what's essential is time, to just really take time, don't rush and don't try to get an outcome. Anyone here who's worked with people would know that it's critical that there's integrity, I guess, in those relationships, and if literally nothing happens and you just end up having cups of tea, that's better than pushing an outcome and making the wrong sort of fast choices that maybe end up being more damaging than fruitful, which is kind of common sense, but we all do it. We've all made that mistake with the pressure of having to get a show up or something. We can rush, and I would just say take time.
Yeah, time is one of the essences in the working with the communities and with the people who are not professional artists. And I wish you all to have wonderful experiences and projects together, and happy and very involved audiences and communities. And I'm really curious to see what will come out of this project in a couple of years. So thank you so much for being here today with me and together. And I know that you will be allowed to continue the discussion and ask all the questions what you desire to ask these artists after a short break. So thank you so much, and see you after the break.